First off, thank you all very, very much for being here this evening and coming out to this meeting. Hopefully you'll learn a lot. We have some very well-educated dignitaries here this evening, so please make sure you ask all the questions that you have. Sort of just to recap, this is the third meeting of what we had 3 planned meetings to learn a little bit more about planning and zoning on a municipal level. Our first meeting was a very broad overview of what planning and zoning was, how our planning commission functioned, and all the other related boards that go with the planning commission. Our second meeting was a little deeper dive into planning and zoning, how it works, how it affects a community. And tonight is our third meeting that we're going to talk about economic development, both commercial and retail and tourism, and how all of these things work together and how all of these things can affect a community. So again, please make sure that if you have any questions, you have the right people here this evening to answer them. I did not introduce myself. I'm John Lawless. I'm the city manager here in Kingston Springs. And again, thank you all very, very much for being here. So I want to respect your time. We'll take as much time as we need, but I do want to introduce our guests and our speakers this evening. I have Jerome Terrell, JT. He's the director of Cheatham County's Economic Development. We also have Emily Schneller, CCIM. She's vice president at Katz & Associates. And we also have Misty Keenan, who is the director of Cheatham County Chamber of Commerce. So thank you all for being here, and at that, I will turn it over to JT, and JT will take it from there. Great.
Now, do I need to wear this?
You certainly do. You get to wear my bling.
Well, this is exciting. I never get to do this, and I don't use a mic either. So if I fade out on you, tell me what's going on here. But I'm really glad that you guys are here too. I appreciate it very much. What I give is sort of an overview of the more traditional economic and community development opportunities that come our way as far as recruiting of companies and expansion of existing industry. Emily is going to focus on retail, and Misty is going to focus on tourism. So all 3 of those are under the economic development umbrella. And my presentation, actually I named it for my mother-in-law. It's called the Ruth Ann presentation. And the reason I named it for my mother-in-law is that I've been in economic development for 25-something years. And all of those years, it comes up several times during the year is, what is it that you really do? And so I'll say, well, I help the prosperity of the area and growth. Well, how do you do that? And I said, well, by recruiting companies. And, well, how do you do that? It's always, how do you do that? Now, she doesn't know this. She doesn't know this there, and I doubt that you run into her. But if you ever do, don't tell her, okay? Because she would be embarrassed that something is named after her. But it is kind of that way, you know, in a lot of areas you think about what is economic development. There's not a lot of degrees that you can get in economic development. There's a few schools that have it. Most of the people that end up in economic development, like me, are there by default. I was doing economic development on the other side of the coin and didn't even realize it. I was a regional director for Averitt Express, and I opened up the state of Kentucky. I opened 11 facilities for them. So what I would do is go into a town, study the demographics, knew where our customers were, the logistics of the highways, where we could have fuel or not, had to go before planning and zoning and do all that stuff. And somebody about the end of my last opening said, you know, there's people that do that out there, don't you? You know, there's people in economic development. Well, now I do, and I'm one of them. So, John, is this my changer here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I hope I do this right. So, most people, when they find out about a project or something that has come to their area, find out about it through news, or they, hey, have you heard, or something like that. So what goes on behind the scene? Why does it even happen to begin with? Well, the obvious things are that you would know. You think about growth, you know, but there are a lot of other reasons too, especially now that most businesses out there are international and things go on in other countries and other parts of the world that affect what we're doing here. So if I have something like mergers, acquisitions, you know what that is. Market changes, you obviously know what that is. Can anybody tell me what a socioeconomic change might be, or reasons for a company to expand or grow or relocate. Anybody think of anything on the socioeconomic part of it? It's a little tricky, honestly, because we've got a company that moved into Gallatin. It's called Beretta. Beretta Arms makes firearms. They were in the Northeast. There's a lot of contention with the Sandy Hook massacre that occurred up there. They couldn't find people that they could hire to move in because of that overview of that industry. The same thing with Remington Arms. Remington has a place in Huntsville, Alabama, and Beretta in Gallatin. Back about 15 years ago, Louisiana Pacific came to town. They were looking for a new location because they're in Portland, Oregon. They're making OSB product, not doing a lot on the forestry side of it anymore, but most of the folks there looked at them as being a company that would go and cut down forest, even though it was renewable. So they were picketing and marching on their office. They were expanding, but they couldn't get any interest from the city at all to help them with their expansion or even talk about it. So they went on the market and they ended up in Nashville, Tennessee. So there's a lot of reasons for changes other than just your typical growth. I put logistics up there. Recently, Amazon has a new facility here. It's going to have 5,000 people in the logistics side of it. Nashville and Middle Tennessee area has always been a strong logistics position for us, particularly in the automotive industry. So if you look at when things started changing and companies started moving away from Detroit, Saturn plant was one of those in Spring Hill, but also you had Honda in Marysville, Ohio, Toyota in Georgetown, Kentucky, Toyota Blue Springs, Mississippi, which is Tupelo, VW in Chattanooga, of course Nissan in Smyrna, and also BMW in South Carolina. I mean, you can go on. If you crosshair all of those, that puts the Middle Tennessee area sort of right in the middle of that. And honestly, a couple of guys came to my office when I was at the Chamber of Commerce, and they said, we've been to Detroit. They were a German company. We've been to Detroit and found out that it moved to Nashville. And if you look at it, really it has. The I-65 corridor is where a lot of suppliers end up and things like that. So those are the reasons why that there's changes and people expand and move other than what you typically think of. So a company will, and I'm just going to give you a walkthrough on a project, how it works, and then we'll talk about retail and tourism after that. But a company will hire a site consultant. Typically, they're not affiliated with the company at all. They have their own business going. The reason they do that are listed up there. First of all, confidentiality is key with this company. They don't want their competition to know. They don't want their employees to know in a lot of cases because the employees think that they're going to close down and move and leave them high and dry. And many times it's just an expansion. But they've heard that story before, and so they want to remain confidential on all that. Consultants are looking at information all the time for their customers out there. They're looking at databases. They already are looking at our area for different things in a composite fashion to see where the next expansion might be located because it's got all the right things. So they're the experts in it, and the companies pay them to do that work. As the process begins, and I'm throwing a date up there, and I'll add some people in it as we go to talk about the length of time of the project as well as how many people get involved. And the real name of this presentation is Economic Development's a Team Sport because it does touch a lot of areas and there's a lot of people involved with it. But as the process begins, the site consultants do search for the data. They start looking at wages in the area. They look at what's going on here. Is this will this be a fit for the company that they're working for? They look at the unemployment rates. They look at degrees and education levels. Some of them may want, like Hemlock up in Clarksville was looking for a certain type of metallurgical engineer, and they needed those, and they found that there were 31 that had that degree in a certain drive time of Clarksville, so that was a good fit for them to be able to do that. And then, of course, any kind of education and so forth. We also have, which came out of the Tax Reform Act in 2017, an opportunity zone in Cheatham County that is, you can see where it is. It's on the other side of the river, and it runs almost to I-24 on the top side. But that's an area where if they can have investors that will want to reduce their tax burden, if they sell land and then they've got an additional tax burden on that land, they can purchase in the opportunity zone, create something, almost anything. It could be apartments, it could be a retirement community, anything like that that would be a fit. and after 10 years, then they're exempt from some of these taxes. So it has created, we've actually got 3 projects in the Opportunity Zone right now, because you can see it goes all the way down to the river. So site consultants will be looking at all of those things to figure out if this is a good fit for this project or not. So as it starts out, they've already gone through the data, and now they have about 8 locations across the country that they have selected as be suitable for that site. Now, if I were looking at this, I could probably tell, just because I've been doing it a while, but those are good sites for data centers. Data centers being computers, not a call center, but an actual data center. We've got Bank of New York Mellon has a huge data center in Nashville. Probably a lot of people will not even know it's there. There's no name on it. It's a retina scan to get in. There's mirrors under the car. It's a very high confidential area. And when they came and started looking, they needed 2 substations to feed them and all these initial things that they needed to have to be able to do it. But there's other locations, Raleigh, North Carolina, the Maryland area, Austin, Texas, and so forth, that I would say those are probably good fits for data centers just by looking at that. So the consultant will contact the state of Tennessee ECD, and by the way, we have Edward Birch that's here from the state ECD. He is our contact and go-to person for the state, and I want to pat the state on the back and tell you we're lucky that we have the quality and of the folks from that are heading up our ECD for the state. Very high level. I've seen it in other states and how it works, and we're on top of the heap for that one. So we get with TVA, the state of Tennessee, and the local community. Those are the 3 partners that typically will be working the project. So when the prospect comes to town, these are the folks that are going to be sitting at the table and talking to them. Each one of those have an area that they work in to assist the companies to move here. Now, in that process, part of it with the state is that we're vetting these projects. We look at their financial background. We look at what they're doing. They may not be a fit for us, so we're screening those, and that's what we all do when we start with this project. Is this something that we really want to entertain? Is this something we want to put incentives on? Is this good for our area? Is it a fit? So as the community moves along in that, we receive what's called an RFI or an RFP, a request for information. And it usually looks like this. And actually, this is one that we got last week, Edward, if you remember. This one came through. And I took out the company name on there because they asked for us to be confidential with that. But you can see what they're looking for in there. They want to know about buildings. Do you have a building that's available? Do you have an area? Do you have an industrial park area with infrastructure in it? This is going to be the size of the project, 8 to 12 million. We're going to have a 50 to 150 square foot building on 5 to 10 acres, 40 to 100 employees. This is a little more general than normal. Normally we will get more of an exact number on the 283 jobs and that kind of thing. They'll tell us what we're looking for. They want to own or lease it. In this case, they could do either one. The type of site, is it a greenfield? It could be, or an existing building. Yeah, that would work for us as well. So you just go down the line there and you see what they're looking for of their needs. Is it a wetland status? Is it, how close to the interstate system is there transportation? Many times they need to know how far is it from the airport. All these kind of things. So we're meeting the criteria for this as we go and the critical requirements. And we generally have a timed amount of a very short time that we respond to that, because speed to market is everything with these companies. They're really looking for that. So these are the folks that will end up working on it. Local codes and the local utilities will have their input on it. Chamber of Commerce, that's why Misty is here. She's got the initiative of working on the tourism side of it, so we'll all be involved. And you can see I'm kind of collecting up people that have touched it, and quite honestly, there's probably a lot more than that would touch a project by this time. We get the RFIs completed. If you remember, it started on July the 5th, and that's August the 15th, and we submit it back to the consultant. 10 people have touched it. Then they want to come and see it. They want to look at it. They've already screened it. All the data shows that it'll work here. We've responded to the RFI. We say, yes, we can meet these needs. So they come and look at it. When they do, we prepare for that, just like you would for anything. Visitors are coming. We're going to pick them up at the airport. Which route are we going to take them? We don't want the one that goes by the dump. We're going to, do the nice route for them and show them the good stuff as they come in. So 18 people are involved. They come and do their site visits to the community, and then the company's board of directors are going to meet, and they're going to discuss it with the final group that look through and see where it's going to be, and they make a short list of 5 sites. So these are the ones that are now going to be in final competition. All of a sudden, the project goes silent. And I put this in here not to be cute, but this happens a lot. And the reason it happens a lot is because the board of directors meets, they start talking about it. They've been talking about it for 2 years. They've got the project funded. They've got a 2-year contract that they've put in with General Motors over here that's supposed to hit a certain time. The time allows them to be able to build and all that. Then all of a sudden something happens with one of their competitors, or maybe the contract, maybe General Motors has said, well, we may be waiting on that contract a little bit. Something may be going on with that. So they'll hesitate, they'll wait, watch what's going on, and then several months later, January 13th, we hear back from them and they say, yep, the project's still on, and by the way, it's changed. When we told you it was going to have 200 jobs, now it's going to have 350, or the reverse. Or if it's a power need, it was a 5 megawatt for TVA to come up with, now it's a 10. So it's got to change. So we've got to respond to these changes, and typically we've got to respond in a faster fashion than it was when it first came out, because now, after this waiting period and after they've had their discussions with their competitors and all these kind of things, or they figure out what's going on, now it's in a hurry, and we've got to do it in a hurry. So I tell that to folks to say, a lot of times if we're working with the local utilities and these kind of things, we've gone through this process with them, we've gotten the answers in response. Now we come back to them and say, by the way, this is going to change from 5 megawatts to 15 megawatts. And they say, well, we don't have really time to work on it right now because we've got some emergency stuff going on. I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but by Thursday afternoon, we've got to have this submitted or we're not going to be in the game anymore. So this is a lot of times what happens, and it gets in a hurry toward the end. So we've had 24 folks, January 13th. They do it after 8 months. They select our site is going to be the one that they're going to land on. We go to the announcement side and we put it out in the newspaper. But I wanted to give you sort of the overall view of that. Now, 8 months, quite honestly, is a short period of time compared to what most of the projects are. Nissan corporate headquarters in Franklin took 3 years. A company called Clarcor that landed in Cool Springs took over 2 years. I worked on Hemlock and Clarksville for over 2 years. They changed their team twice during that time that it was so long involved. So many times these are much longer than that. But Emily's going to come up next, but before I leave this part, is there any parts of it that you have questions about or have a comment about? Anything? Yes?
Can you tell us where the site is and what type of industry?
This is just a sample. This is not a real project.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wanted to do it that way so you can see how the process works. And I also want to tell everybody that, the way that I see economic development, the way our team sees economic development in this area is, fortunately, Cheatham County does not have a lot of stuff to undo. And by that, I mean, we didn't allow a lot of things to happen earlier days that now are creating more of an issue than before. I've been quoted in the paper as being a tree-hugging economic developer, because that's what I am. I moved to Cheatham County for the same reasons that many of you have or you like about where you live. And the concern that I have is that we're between a couple of really high-growth areas, Nashville, Clarksville, and then Dixon is really starting to grow as well. So unfortunately, for a lot of us thinking about this, things are going to change, and we need to be able to manage that rather than just let it go and to ask the question, you're wondering where this goes, we don't have that at this point. But that's the kind of questions that we would be asking, where is this? What is it going to be? What is it going to do to the area? So we're very concerned about that. Managing the growth at this point needs to be done. I was retired from TVA Economic Development for 14 months. I was driving down Main Street in Ashland City where I live, and there was a check cashing facility that had just moved in, and it was the entrance to our city. Now, it's a viable business. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly legal. Everything about it is good. It fits the zoning and everything else. But that's not what I wanted to see as the entrance to our town. and I think we need to do a little bit more managing of that, and that's why we're getting out and talking, and so much I appreciate John and his folks wanting to know more about what we do, because we need your help. Again, this is a team deal, and if we can get together and make sure that we're growing in the way that most of the people, you're not going to be able to satisfy everybody. I had a comment the other day from a guy who said, the very best thing you can do is listen. The very worst thing you can do is try to please everybody, and I think he was actually absolutely right. So we can't please everybody, but we can try to manage that system and do more of that. So with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to Emily Schneller, and she's our retail expert. I didn't mean to cut off. Is there any other questions? That was a good question.
I've got a question, JT.
Yes.
And hopefully I'm not asking something that you can't tell me, but
Yep, in my...
you asked about RFQ. You mentioned RFQ. Say from a county-wide basis, on a given month, how many RFQs, requests for qualification, requests for proposals come through your office? And of those that come through your office, how many with the area, Cheatham County at large, are you able to respond to?
Good question. About 6 to 7 a month on the RFIs or RFP, and very rarely will we be able to respond to many at all. I would say probably on the average, I've responded last year to probably about 7 or 8 for the year total. And mainly it's because we just don't have the sites, or it's something that's not suitable for us. Edward and I have been working back and forth on a little project that's working right now. We really would like to have it. It's really a good fit, except there's no land that we have in the right spots that would be a good fit for it. If I told you what it was, everybody in this room would probably say, oh, that's pretty cool. I'd like to have it. Really. Remember, I'm a tree hugger. So,
I'll just ask you, JT, really we do see, and this is something that Cheatham County has working forward, is the expansion of existing industries.
Yes.
And that's something that, if the state, 70% of our job growth in the state comes from existing industries expanding, because we have such a business-friendly climate, and really Cheatham County is no exception. There are those projects that are still kind of in its infancy, but that they do have the ability to expand. We just need more land.
Right. Well, and I'll show you, sorry, last year, well, I'll cut that slide off, but I'm sorry, Emily. Last year we had a total of 6 projects that we worked through. 2 of them were expansions. The other 4 were new, and it totaled up 750 new jobs and $94 million in capital investment to the county. I don't remember the payroll numbers, but they were pretty huge too. And what drives a lot of other stuff, as you know already, is going to be that type of information and that type of projects. Emily's going to be talking about what drives retail. And you're just not going to find a Target store in an area that has less than this many rooftops, this many daytime shoppers, this type of spending habits. They're not going to be there until they hit those numbers. So, John, back to it, very rare that we're able to hit it. A lot of times right now with the speed to market, they want an existing building and they want all the infrastructure there. They don't want any time delays in that, and we just don't have that much. We sold the last industrial site that we had to Nashville Fabricating and Camus Boats, and so I'm in the process of trying to find some folks that might have an interest, if they're in the right area and the right thing, that they want to put their land in the pocket for some expansion, and that's what we're doing right now. But you're right, so much of it is local expansion. So, sorry, any other questions? Okay, Emily. Like this.
Well, do I want it, and does he want me to wear it, or 2 different questions? There we go. Well, thank you all for having me here. Can you hear? I like to stand behind this so I can lean. He's gonna. Not as loud as you. Okay, better?
Yeah.
Okay. So just wanted to kind of touch on a few things. I've done retail for almost 20 years now, and I've known you probably almost that long, as we've worked on different projects and growth areas together. But retail's not that different from the industrial side of it, because what we look for with retailers is there's a strategy. And what I do with Katz & Associates and with some other companies before is that we work with national and regional retailers, and we do strategic growth plans, whether it's for the state of Tennessee or surrounding states or just a certain region. Sometimes it may just be Middle Tennessee. Some of our clients, we cover the entire state. But we look at several things: demographics for growth, what's the population, what's the rooftop, what are the households, what's the growth. Traffic counts are a huge driver for certain retailers, so how close are you to the interstate, or if you're just on a highway, what does that look like? And a lot of people want a lot of different things, but retail is very particular about how they do things. They have all these requirements, so even once we find an area, and you'll notice this if you go to Dixon, to some of the new projects there, or Nashville West, or Bellevue with One Bellevue Center. If you're going up on the north side, up into Clarksville, you've got the old Kmart that just got redeveloped, which I can't remember what they're calling it, but off of Madison and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. But they all want this synergy of retail. So a grocery store may go do its own thing, but again, it depends on the population, the rooftops, the traffic counts, and how many people are going by here every day. And then when you get with the other retailers like a Ross or a TJ Maxx or Rack Room Shoes, they all want to be together. If you go into any of these areas, you'll see that they kind of all cluster. And it's really important in the way they structure their deals, or co-tenancy is one of the biggest things we fight for, because nobody wants to be by themselves. So in an area where you're trying to grow and get some new things, just like you were talking about with planning, it's really important that if growth is what you want in the retail area, to really look at what fits your community, what you want, and how you can come up with a plan so that it's not scattered all over the place. They really want to be close together. And I haven't spent a lot of time in Pleasant View, but I've heard about some of the really cool things happening there. We're supposed to go there and have a little field trip here in the near future. But really looking at that piece of it on what do you want and how do you get it? And then is there a plan? Because when you have retail, like you have industrial zones, plan for retail too. Decide, this is what we'd like, and know the demographics that are required for some of these things to happen if you want them in the future. But it all comes back to a collaboration of thought and working together on this is what we'd like to see, and this is how we're going to work together to have it, because it really does take that collaboration of the private, public, nonprofit, all those sectors coming together to say, this is how we're going to make it happen, and getting the right people in place, whether it's a developer that has developed 27 public stores across the Southeast, and getting in with those people, because they all have preferred developers, and it's really important that you work with some of those people and try to work together instead of, I can do it on my own, or I'm going to fight this because I don't want it, and think about what's good for the community. I didn't prepare anything. I get nervous too. I'm used to just sitting in a car and talking to retailers and not getting in front of people all the time. But I'm happy to answer questions. I know, everybody has thoughts and things that they'd like to see in a community, and I'm happy to tell you more about the process. If you kind of tell me what you want to know, I'll elaborate as much as I can. Anybody? Yes.
I know the people I talk to, you don't want growth. And I know some of it's inevitable, but the thing that I like best about Kingston Springs is the local things, the filling station, the pizza, caffeine pizza. All of those things is what makes this such a unique place. We don't want McDonald's and Burger King and all the things that we can just run up to Bellevue if we want it.
Right. And I think that that's an important thing to know, not just as individuals, but as a community, and really having a plan that, you know, assuming that there will continue to be growth, because like it or not, Nashville continues to grow, and even into areas that haven't traditionally grown a lot. So you will probably continue to have more population move out. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and people want to get away from the city, and it's not that far in if you're commuting in for different jobs. But assuming it would happen someday, it's really having a growth plan to say, okay, well, maybe we don't want a Kroger downtown, but maybe we'll have something over here closer to the interstate, and how do you manage that growth? And if it's really not something you want, you know, I mean, and that's fine. It's just really coming together as a community to say this is what we want for our city, but also understanding that some of those things that you may want may not come without some growth in the population and the traffic counts. It's a balance. Yes?
I was just going to throw out, based on that comment, like, that we did these 3 sessions, and this is the 3rd one, and it was to educate people in the community, for all of us to come together and kind of get some background on things like economic development, planning, zoning, those sorts of things. And now the Board of Commissioners and the Planning Commission are kind of moving to a phase to try to do some sort of a comprehensive plan for the community. So that will involve everyone that's here tonight, hopefully still in that process, like you're talking about. It involves the community coming together to kind of state those priorities. So we are trying to move in a way to do that. The purpose of tonight, of course, is to kind of just more information as to how economic development happens and what we do and we don't want in our community. So that's all. I just want to kind of interject.
No.
There is something beyond what's going on tonight, and there's a reason for these sessions that we've been having.
No, that's great, and it's important to have sessions and information sharing and thought sharing.
Yeah, I was wondering how the availability of a younger labor force affects the ability to attract retail and restaurants here, because I'm sure Kingston Springs has, it's either older or very younger, and I was just wondering
How?
how that affects it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
If, say Applebee's wanted to come here, they have to recruit people from Bellevue or Dixon.
And you may have to do that for a while, I think. But that's a problem in every area. I mean, even Cool Springs down in Williamson County, some of those kids don't have to work. And so they have a problem with getting employees. And so a lot of the retailers now, you know, one of the things that I never had to do when I first started doing this is, hey, where's the bus stop? Or what's the commute from a certain area where the households are? Because they've got to be able to get employees there that don't have to sit in traffic for an hour and a half. And so those are things that we've really never had to focus on, that we now have to. I didn't have to know where the bus stop was for my retailer so that his employees could get off the bus, and now I have to know, and I have to know the bus schedule, things that, you know, it's a new day and for every business, and I think that's why the communication part and having meetings and conversations like this are so important. Yes, ma'am.
I would like you to give an example of like rooftops or population, because the population in Springs is very low, and I've been here 8 years and it hasn't really increased that much. Just curious, I'm like, I mean, I don't want to McDonald's or anything like that, but just say XYZ wants to move to Kingston Springs. What does the rooftop look like? I don't think we're big enough for anything like that.
Well, and you may not be right now. And it's different for every retailer, whether it's a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or a FedEx office. I mean, it could be anything. So every retailer has their own specific requirements at TJ Maxx or Ross. And sometimes it's not even the population within that community. It's how far is the reach? How many people are coming to this community to shop? And so they take things like that into account.
It seems like a lot of people are get upset about like we don't have enough restaurants and things like that, but I don't really think we have the population to support that either, unless it's a mom and pop type place.
Right.
Do you agree with that, or?
Well, and honestly, you know, I haven't studied the demographics like I really should. I got asked to do this pretty recently.
Probably forced.
Forced. But, you know, depending on, and you were talking about the age of the employee base and things like that, even with nice restaurants, I mean, do you have the employees that would work there, the employee base? And those are things that most retailers, and honestly, I would hope, even as moms and pops, and I love some of the local places, I hope that they do their homework. And that's the difference sometimes between a mom and a pop organization or restaurant or boutique versus the nationals, is that they have deep pockets. They've done a lot of demographic research and traffic count studies, and there's things that they're able to do that not everybody else can do, but there's still a need in every community for certain things. The post office, the banks, the drugstores. There's things that are just nice to have for convenience sake that are important, I think, in every community. Yes, sir.
I think we're somewhat safe on development down here. Most of the land here, as most of you know, is either privately owned or we're bordered by the river. We're now in floodplain. So as far as growth, I'm not the oldest person that's been here, but I've been here 40 years. We've experienced quite a bit of growth in the last few years. As far as rooftops, I will say this, the city does a good job of regulating that growth and trying to maintain the quaint atmosphere that y'all like. I want Walmart out here, I'll be honest with you. I want Cat D's, I want all of that, but I'm fine. I've been here before any of this was here, and it hasn't gotten oversaturated in my opinion. And I'm probably one of the few that want that, but when you were talking about that economic development areas, I know Topo is a big problem down here too. We don't have any flat land. We're hills and dales. So I understand why Ashland City is good for that. I would think Pleasant View would be another economic developed area other than residential's already taken most of that good land. Just a few thoughts and no questions, but
Okay.
I commend y'all for coming, and I do commend the city government for what they do.
One other thing to
Go
sort
ahead.
of keep in mind too is that my family bought a farm in Spring Hill in 1969, population of 700, literally 700. I was in the military, I came home on leave and went to the one gas station and it's Gulf, and he came out and put gas in my car and he said, "Are you that terrible boy?" I've never been there before. So, but what happened then, this is a good example that, getting prepared, knowing what economic development is, having some plans and things like that is Haynes Haven was a horse farm. And the family, as they aged out and the younger people at Haynes Haven sold to General Motors, and that's where Saturn is. Well, that was of no intent of anybody, nobody expected anything like that, and of course they wanted it there. Everybody went crazy and escalated their land prices, and it was like a carnival for a while. But the point I'm making is that we all have areas where Aunt Susie, when she passes away or she, moves to, assisted living or something like that, and the kids live in San Diego and they haven't been here except to visit her in a while, what's going to happen, and that kind of thing. And that's where you need to plan and
Yeah.
be ready for that kind of stuff. So not to, be woe is me, but that's the kind of thing that will happen in that area. So.
Anybody else? And we'll turn it over for the tourism. Yes, sir.
This is a little bit of a reach. When you were talking about workforce and proximity to a bus stop, this is just me getting an opportunity to open what I feel I'd like to see is every bus stop that's a bench have a shelter. And I'm just throwing it out because y'all are in the state and in government. I'm not for big government, but I'm glad to pay for that. It really, when I see someone that needs to take a bus and is standing there in the rain, and, I think we can afford that. So thank you for letting me know.
No, all good. All right. Yes, last one, and then we'll go to tourism.
Concerned too about the traffic. Obviously, it already takes about an hour to get to Nashville now, and if we increase, that would take longer. That's one of my concerns. Are they going to widen the interstate or have public transportation?
That's way out of my league. I spent a couple years on a moving forward initiative with the chamber in Nashville, and that was about all I could take. So,
And then the other side of that coin, you will have as many people that say, well, if I had some place to work here, I wouldn't have to drive to Nashville. So, that's
Yeah.
why we have these discussions, to get all that out and make it something good to think about.
The widening of I-40 is in the state's long-range budget, they call it the mix. It's in that budget, I don't know when it's scheduled, but they're going to widen it to Kingston Springs.
thank you all.
Good job.
Well, thank you both. As you heard, there's a lot of numbers, and it's a long process for both of these, for industrial development and recruitment, and for retail, that isn't overnight. So, but before I start to move to tourism, there's a couple things that I really wanted to address. I wanted to address your question about kind of the workforce and the young workforce. We do have an issue with that. We don't have a post-secondary school in the county, and so as soon as people graduate high school, we do see them leave. So in the service industry especially, and it's county-wide issue, is that we do have that issue regarding from Pleasant View to here. We can't find people that want to be waitresses and stuff like that. And part of that is the fact that our household income is around $70,000. So even adults do not have or are not looking for those positions here in the county. I wanted to address your question. I'm sorry, I don't know names, so I'm just going to kind of point. You asked the question about how do they pick, like when businesses are looking, is that correct? Okay. So just to tell a little bit of story, about 5 years ago, Ashland City, the wing place, Buffalo Wild Wings, was looking to relocate. And so their number one place was Ashland City. They wanted to relocate to Ashland City. Well, at that time, we didn't have our amazing ECD director, JT, here, so it didn't come. They didn't contact our ECD department. But besides that, they needed 35,000 people within a 5-minute radius. We don't have that. We don't have that. So now, if you want to go to Buffalo Wild Wings, pretty close, you drive to Dixon, right? So Dixon is packed at that Buffalo Wild Wings all the time. And so a lot of people do that. So we lost that because of the households. And I had, you said you didn't want big box. You don't want the McDonald's. You don't want that, right?
We don't want to be, I don't want to be the same as everybody else. We want to keep the rural feel and the local
Right.
places. I just don't want to be like everywhere else.
And I have told John and Tony, the one thing that I love about Kingston Springs and the Pegram area is that your identity, I feel like, is clearly defined. I think y'all have been super successful in being able to say this is what we want to be. Topography is an issue with that. However, you guys have been able to attract those more unique, quaint places as well. But also in that, you want the Sky King Pizza, right? You want another Amy to open up a business. So what are we doing to attract the small entrepreneur to bring those mom and pop shops here? And if that's what you guys want, I think that should probably be on Tony and John's. That needs to be on their objective, right? So when they're putting a strategic plan together about economic growth, okay, let's not focus on the McDonald's or the Target. Let's focus on how do we create entrepreneurship here in the county and what benefits can we give to them. So I think that's a huge education piece, and if that's something you guys want, is to create more of that, which I love, and it creates the uniqueness in the county, go for it, right? So we need to put those things in place. You want the extra business, right? Vintage Love clothes, I hate that. I drive from Pleasant View to go see that. Now it's not available for me to come when I've come over and over here, right? So anyway, I just wanted to address a couple of those. I've been in this position since December of 2015, and so I've had the opportunity to kind of serve a little bit in each of their roles as far as retail development in the north and middle of the county, and then also been a little bit involved on kind of the economic industrial stuff. I do not want JT's job because he is great at that. He knows those numbers for industry and water and all that crazy stuff. But what I do love, and I'm super passionate about, is I'm passionate about tourism. And so because you can take all the things they just told you, right, the number of households and income and stats and topography, throw that out the window, right? So we're going to throw all of that stuff that they have to create business and economic development, and we're going to throw that out the window. And so we are going to look at Cheatham County and what are our assets? What did God give us and create right here that we can benefit from? So we have the rivers, we have the canoeing, we have the hills, the mountains, we have all of those things. And so when we want to create economic development, tourism is a really, really quick way to be able to do that. So as you saw in JT's presentation, that may go silent for a year. It may go silent for 2 years. Well, we can attract by just our topography and our natural assets that we have, tourism businesses here in Cheatham County. And let me grab my little clicker, because I have a couple things. I'm not going to keep you guys too long, because I know you all have received a lot of information, and I don't want to completely overwhelm you. But everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, a lot of people probably have done exactly this, right? Gone zip lining here in the county. You've never gone zip lining? We are going. We're taking a tour, field trip, okay? So they didn't care how many people lived in Cheatham County. They didn't care what your household income was. They cared about the fact that we had the topography and natural assets to be able to create a ziplining company. And what did they do? They are attracting people from Nashville and surrounding areas to come to Kingston Springs and spend their money and have fun and take advantage of the natural beauty that we have. I'm sorry?
And then leave.
And then leave, right. Right. So I wanted to share a couple things with you really quick. Tennessee as a whole received almost 120 million visitors, right? That's a lot of people visiting the state of Tennessee. And as you look here and on the blue section, middle Upper Cumberland area, Davidson, and we're included in that, received 26% of that. Well, that's a lot. Who's got their calculator out? I want to say that was like 29 million people visited the Upper Cumberland area, right? So, and then right here, as you can see, when they come into Davidson County, where are they going, right? They are not coming here. This, right here, what is this? Williamson, Rutherford, Wilson, and Sumner, right? And so, but we touch Davidson, and there is really no reason why we aren't getting these people to come out here. I'm not worried about Robertson County, although they are my friends and I do like them, but I feel like we probably have more natural assets than they do, right? They don't have the canoeing and the rivers and stuff that we have. But anyway, when they come into Davidson County, they're going to surrounding counties. Williamson County, Wilson, they all have done a really fabulous job of promoting themselves, taking their natural assets. Williamson County specifically focuses on history and their downtown Franklin and all the events they have, which has brought in millions of dollars. I was a little girl and I grew up on Main Street in Franklin, and because that's where my mama lived, and so I would go down there and I went to all those festivals. Well, now I'm 42 years old and I really don't enjoy going anymore because they're crowded. I mean, you get 30, well, not 30, I think the last number was like 22,000 people at their Main Street festival. That's a lot of people, right? And that's too crowded for me. I don't want to do that. I would love to stay here in Ashland City and go to Music on Main. I would love to come out here to Art in the Park. That is a really unique event that we have to offer. But what are we doing to promote that? We're promoting. We're just not getting outside of our area. We're not getting outside of the Cheatham County area to promote that. So if we had a few more people to come inside Cheatham County, spend some dollars, go home, eat at Sky King, eat at Sweet Teas, spend money at Vintage Love, that helps the county and the city be able to spend those dollars. It also puts money into our education, right? They are supporting our education, but we don't have to build a bigger school for our tourists, right? Because we don't have to educate them, but they're funding our education. So the benefits of tourism. It increases employment opportunities, build current assets, rivers, hiking, festivals. Obviously, there's economical and educational growth with that. Our current school system has a budgetary issue at the current moment. That would definitely help. And it's low-hanging fruit. So while these guys are out trying to recruit the retail, recruit the industry, we can create a tourism event, a tourism business that can be up and running within months and be an impact to our economy overnight. And then there's no impact to schools or residential growth, obviously. So every year, the state of Tennessee puts together the numbers of what does tourism bring to each county. And this was our 2008 impact. And I wanted to share that with you really quick. So out of 95 counties, we rank 55. The states that are around Davidson are all in the top 20 except for us. There's a reason for that. It's because we're not doing a really good job. And I take the blame. This falls under my umbrella of Chamber of Commerce. And so I would take the blame for that, is that we have got to do a better job of promoting our assets. We generated $24 million in direct tourism expenditures. Now, I know this is a really large number, and when you guys think, gosh, we didn't have that many visitors. Well, we did. We had people staying in our hotels. We had people buying gas. We had people coming here from Dixon and Memphis and stopping, and so all of those numbers are taken into account as well. We generated 155 jobs. A lot of those are seasonal jobs, but 155 jobs. We produced $4.7 million in payroll, $805,000 in local tax revenue, which is really what I want us to kind of focus on when we're talking about raising money for our schools and our counties to be able to develop that and put sidewalks in, create entrepreneurial programs. That is really huge for us. But let's see, more importantly, right here. In other words, if we didn't have people coming into our county, if we didn't have them spending any money, even what little that we do get, each household saves $150. Now, that may not be a lot for you guys, but I can tell you that's a lot for some people in our county. For in our Title I schools that have issues of paying food for their kids that are on free lunches, $150 a year is a big issue. And so we have the opportunity to increase this and lower the taxes, because if we don't have sales tax coming in at some point, property tax is going to go up. That's just the way it is. We've got to pay for things, right? So, and that's not what we want. This is a really, really quick way to create economic development, create that income coming in, that residual income that we're able to get while these two are helping in these other areas pretty quickly. So this is it. This is all I have for you guys. I didn't want to kind of bore you with those, but I love tourism because people come and play and get out, and a lot of times you don't even realize they're here. Cheatham County is seeing like a spike in Airbnbs, and we're seeing people come in and stay for a long period of time, and I think that's great. We aren't going to be your week-long destination. That's not what I want us to be. I don't think that's what you want. We're not going to be a Pigeon Forge, but what we could do is those people that are going to Nashville, we'll be able to say, hey, look, you can only spend so much time on Broadway. Why don't you come out here and spend a little time in Kingston Springs? Why don't you come out here and get some of that great gelato that Miss Teresa is importing her chocolate from in Italy from, right? So it's all those things that we need to really be looking at our natural assets as benefits, and also being a way to create economic, increase our sales tax and economic economy to help bring in more money without being a huge burden onto our roads and infrastructure and schools. That's my speech. Do we have any tourism questions before any Q&A?
I got one comment. There's a lot of high-powered music industry people in the hills and the vales, southern Cheatham County, and we need some sort of entertainment venue, like a large amphitheater or something. I think it would, those people would gravitate to, and then we could bring other talent here. I mean, because it's a home to a lot of people like that.
I completely agree. And so in 2018, I started the Discover Cheatham Guide, and it's a very small guide. I do print 6,000 of those that go to the welcome centers, all the new residents, and hotels and motels that are in our county. I put Pat Summit's picture on the front because she graduated high school here. It's not where she was born, but she does have claim to fame in Ashland City at the high school. And so I can't keep those in the welcome centers across the state. And so I know it's maybe a little selfish. One, I did want to celebrate her and her history, but I also wanted to get those in the hands of people, put something on that cover that people would say, oh gosh, I know Pat Summitt. I'll pick that book up. Who doesn't want to learn about the best UT basketball, maybe all women's basketball coach in history, right? I can't keep them on the market. This 2020 guide is going to be about our musicians that are hiding in the hills of Cheatham County. And so I'm going to be highlighting them, and hopefully we'll be able to, so I'm not creating a tour of where they're going to live, but I am going to feature them because, again, I think what we're missing as a county is we're not telling our story. We're not telling about all the beautiful things and people that live here, right? No offense to the Canoe Company and Adventure Works, but when they market their business, what are they marketing? Matt, what are they marketing? Do you know? Nashville. I'm near Nashville. When really they live right here in Cheatham County. And so all the surrounding counties have done a really great job of claiming their identity, and we haven't. And so I'm trying with what little budget I get, which is about $15,000 a year, is not a whole lot to promote Cheatham County, but I'm working on that to be able to say, we are amazing, right? We know there's musicians that live in Williamson County, right? Because they claim them, right? So, but we don't talk about John Rich that went to Pleasant View Christian School. Not probably many people knew that, right? We don't talk about, Jake Owen put his own video out about hometown, so he's doing a great job with that. But all these great things, Mel Tillis and Louise Mandrell and Don Williams those are stories we need to tell. There's stories of Cheatham County that we need to tell. And I'm so tired of hearing the negative stories about Cheatham County because Cheatham County is beautiful.
Just a little anecdote. I was a band booster years ago, and we wanted a fundraiser. We created Cabin Fever. All of a sudden, Alan O'Brien, head of the National Bluegrass Band, 2 Grammys, said, we'll do a set. Philip White, who wrote for Rascal Flatts and won Grammys and Song of the Year, he did a set for us. We had one of the best Texas swing bands in the country, and then we have a local band. And that those are the people that showed up. Yeah. Because they love this place, and they want to contribute to it. And we filled the auditorium at the school for 400 people. Yeah. Raised over $10,000. And it's just that kind of energy.
Well, I think we need to get to the point where we're truly looking at tourism, low impact on our communities, but a huge impact to our bottom line. And we're really looking at this as an economic booster, and we need to really take advantage of it, right? We don't want to be Pigeon Forge. That's not what we want. But we do want to celebrate our county and our people and our assets, and also be able to benefit from that from an economic standpoint. So I'm playing a very small part. And I would love for y'all to all jump on the tourism train and help with that because, like Jerome said, it's a team sport, and so there's only so many people that can speak towards it and do it and work it. It's got to be all of us together. So, yes, sir.
Based on tourism, just to ask a couple other questions. What is the participation in the Chamber of Commerce for the merchants and businesses in the southern part of the county? Do you have any idea?
Well, there
used to be mixers and things like that I was aware of, and I don't think that happened.
So we have had 5 meetings out here this year. We started a small business group, so we've had 5 meetings this year. And just to put it in perspective, it's me and a part-time employee. Jerome sucks up the rest of her time. So what we're looking for is we went through a change right, where we didn't have a good stability there. And so I've been there for 4 years, and so it has taken a little bit for me to kind of break through the, oh, you're probably not going to be here very long, so I don't want to put a whole lot of work into that. And literally, not begrudging anybody, and I completely understand why, and it's not just Kingston Springs, it's the entire county, is I really had to knock down some barriers, right, for that. And so we have been working to do that. And I was just talking, I was talking to someone a little bit earlier about, the new chiropractics that just opened, Zach and Carrington. So, and when you're talking about young workforce, it's really important that we create an environment that we are attracting those young residents back, young workforce, entrepreneurs back in this county, right? And so we're working with them to what does that look like? What does it look like to attract, to have a come home program where we're saying, yeah, okay, go off and get your degree because we can't offer that for you, but come back home. Right? And so that's what we want. And so as we roll into 2020, you'll see more socials, more chamber events over here. But we did have 5 this year. We had one on social media marketing. I had small business funding from Pathway Lending come out earlier this year. And then we had 2 socials.
Okay. Well, that's probably my fault because I don't think our local paper, and I love Dale Graham to death, but I don't think they publicize a lot of these events that people would participate with, or I missed them. My wife owns her own business, obviously it's in Nashville, but do the banks still recruit like they used to years ago? I used to be a business recruiter for First American Bank, that tells you how old I am, but we would go out and solicit businesses to come to certain areas. Do our banks, are you aware, Debbie and Harry, I don't know if that's the new name of it or not.
It's First now Heritage is First Financial. I know they're all changing. The Community Bank is going to change here soon to Reliant. So I'm not aware that they are recruiting business. I know that Heritage and Heritage, Pinnacle, and Community Bank at the time were all heavily involved in that, and they played a significant role because we didn't have really a formal ECD in chamber, and so they were all trying to fulfill those roles. So since then, I have not seen that, but my desire is to help create that back because a lot of businesses have gone to the Bellevue chamber, and I'm not upset, and I completely understand why they would do that because there's a huge networking group over there. But that's the same reason why you don't see additional businesses coming out here because when they look at radius, right, in retail, what are they pulling? They're pulling Kingston Springs and Peagram's numbers. They're saying, oh, Kingston Springs and Pegram will come down here to Bellevue. I don't need to go there. And we do that. So, but we're working on it. I would love your participation and assistance. So your involvement, I would love that. Any other questions?
I forgot to introduce Matt Monlin a while ago with the GNRC. He is going to be your neighbor. He's building a house out here, but he works in all of those areas to support economic development. They're a great organization. How far along are you on the house?
That's the golden question.
I mean, we're going to have some.
Hopefully by Christmas.
Okay.
Hopefully by Christmas.
Well, first off, I want to thank JT, Emily, Misty for the information that they shared with us tonight. And I also want to thank all of you for taking the time out of everybody's really busy schedule to come out and learn more. And hopefully you'll be able to share this information with your friends and family. Forgot to mention earlier, we were live streaming to our Facebook page, so hopefully people that weren't able to be here were able to catch it on the live stream. We've recorded this, and we'll have a video of this meeting as well as the slide set up on the town's website. If you go to our website, on the right-hand side, there is an information called training tab on there, and all of these past presentations, all these past meetings are out there as well for you to view. So please let your friends and family know that that's out there. And also to amplify what Mayor Gross had mentioned, these 3 meetings that we've had now are 3 meetings that we were using as preparatory educational meetings for a larger community event with the Planning Commission and our Board of Commissioners to discuss the vision of Kingston Springs 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So this is not the end of all of this conversation. This is really just the very beginning of this conversation. So please make sure you continue to stay involved and tell your friends and family again that we are just now moving forward with this, and so there'll be more news to come. So with that, I want to honor your time. Thank you again very much for coming out here. Thank you, our presenters and our guests. Have a lovely evening.